So call the meeting to order. So good afternoon to everybody. I'm Jeff Cook. I'm the chairman of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission, and welcome everybody to our day one of our two-day March meeting. And this is our committee day, so committee work day. So all the discussion from the commission will be from the committee members to whatever committee's meeting, and any votes will be the committee members. And if the public has any comments or questions, please step to the microphone and address those comments either to me or the chairman of the committee that's in session. And please state your name and where you're from, and address any of those questions to one of the chairmen. So with that, I think we'll do the roll call, please, Annette.
Dennis Garner.
Here.
Angie Box.
Here.
Bill Cox. Connie King. Chad Baker. James Stroud.
Here.
Bill Swan.
Here.
Kent Woods.
Here.
Brian McLaren.
Here.
Tony Sanders.
Here.
Kurt Holbert. Jeff Cook.
Here.
Jamie Woodson. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Well, thank you. Well, are there any announcements from the commission? Director Carter, any announcements or comments?
Not right now, sir. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, I'll turn it over to Chairman Holbert for the Wildlife Committee.
Thank you, Chairman Cook. This time I'd like to call on Brad Miller. He's going to give us an update on the strategic elk plan.
Afternoon, everybody. So today I'm going to share the strategic elk management plan with y'all, and you should each have a copy in your packet. And the copy is dated as March 20th, and we're considering this our final draft unless there are any comments or suggested changes that come out of today's meeting. So the strategic plan is a 10-year plan. A lot of state agencies have elk plans and deer plans, and they vary from 5 to 15 years. The Kentucky elk plan is 15 years, but we settled on 10 years. And our strategic plan has an emphasis on healthy elk herds, healthy habitat, and incorporating stakeholder and public involvement. Overall, the elk plan provides, it outlines our program goals. Where are we going, and how do we get there in a strategic manner, in a strategic way. But it also eventually will have annual operational plans that are not within this elk plan, but will be crafted annually to achieve those goals. And they really get into the nuts and bolts, number of elk, number of acres, and those will be developed in cooperation with stakeholders. So how did we develop this elk plan? Well, it first started with some public scoping workshops. We had 2 workshops. One in Campbell County, which was attended by about 30 folks, and one in Scott County that was not attended quite as well. But overall, we got some really good feedback. You know, over 150 individual comments on elk in Tennessee. And the way we worked the workshops is we had breakout tables. So we had 5 breakout tables, and each table would have a theme. With one table may be education, one table may be habitat, whatever. And we would bring in 6 or 8 folks to a table. We would say, so what do you think about how we're doing with habitat management? What could we do better? You know, what are your opinions? And they would share with us. And after they got done at that table, they'd rotate to a new table. So at the end, everybody had an opportunity to comment on what we felt were some big picture themes in elk management in Tennessee. As I mentioned, we got a lot of good comments, a lot of good feedback, and then later, I think today there's going to be a presentation about our new elk camera, and that was one of the comments that was presented at these workshops that some other states have done for eagles and Alaskan brown bears and whatever. One other state has an elk camera that they run in the fall. So that that was a really unique outcome from these workshops that's already been acted upon. So based on what we heard and internal thoughts about where we needed to go, we drafted a plan in the fall of 2017. That plan was shared with the elk team and with our leadership, and after a lot of internal review, ultimately it was presented to our partners in December. So it went out to the Wildlife Federation and RMEF and others, and then I believe you commissioners received a copy at that time as well. And we received a lot of feedback, a lot of really good comments, and incorporated those comments into a plan that was shared in mid-January with the public. We provided a link on our website to view the plan. We provided an email address where folks could directly respond with any thoughts they had, and also accepted written comments. Didn't get a lot of participation, only 18 comments during that time period, but some were very insightful. So, let's just kind of talk about plan components. How is this plan constructed? Well, we begin with a history lesson. We talk about, where did we come from? We talk about when elk were brought in, where they came from, where they went, how a restoration zone was established. And then we move on to where we are now. What's the current status about elk in Tennessee? What's our population? What's our habitat management? And so forth. And I would mention these 5 general themes are also the same themes that we utilized at our public scoping workshops. And then the plan concludes with goals, objectives, and strategies that go back and address each of those 5 themes. So we have an overall population goal, a habitat goal, a recreation goal. Those are the high, 40,000 foot level goals where we want to take the elk program. But then it delves down in kind of a stepped approach into specific objectives under a goal, and then under an objective we would have specific strategies. So because I have a limited amount of time and you guys probably don't want me to go through all 59 strategies, what I want to do is just give an example about how we go from this 50,000 foot view to actually doing work on a landscape. So if you see this image, that is an aerial photo near the elk viewing tower of some existing fields, and then the blue polygons are potential field expansions. Well, again, a strategic plan provides us a way to be strategic in the way we allocate our time and our manpower and our equipment. All too often we have done these random acts of conservation where we see a flat spot, let's say, okay, let's put a field in there. Well, I think there's probably a better way to do this, and that's what a strategic plan should do, is help focus you and guide you in the way you manage habitat or populations and so forth. So as an example, if we wanted to do on-the-ground habitat work, first we're going to start with our habitat goal. We have this large goal, let's conserve, enhance, and expand elk habitat within the zone. Well, what does that mean when you've got almost 700,000 acres where you could do work? How do you wrap your mind around that and actually get some things done in a strategic manner? Well, first, we're going to step down to an objective that says, let's take a 5-year approach. Let's develop a 5-year habitat plan just on our state land. That's what we can control. We can recommend things to landowners, but state land is what we have control over. And let's create some measurable objectives. Okay, so that's a step down. So again, you would step down and say, let's do it on our public land. We've got 200,000 acres or so that's either state-owned or leased. So we've gone from almost 700,000 acres to 200,000 acres, stepping down. And even beyond that, let's prioritize where we want to do that work. To do that, let's develop elk focal areas. So these are specific places on the public land that either have existing elk populations, they may have habitat work that we could build upon, they may be areas where we want to increase connectivity between elk. So again, we're stepping down to strategically utilize our funding and manpower and equipment. So what would that look like? It goes back to that picture. The red areas would be elk focal areas, and then within an elk focal area, you would identify specific sites where you might want to implement some habitat work. So again, that was just a quick example, but it sort of illustrates how we would use a strategic plan to guide management. Any questions about anything in the plan? Yes, sir.
Commissioner Swan?
I'm sorry. What kind of response did you have from the landowner who shot the 2 elk last year with regard to this?
So we had we had several landowners that were issued depredation tags. Some of them have provided comments on the elk plan, but many have not. I mean, I can share those comments with you if you'd like to see them.
What are we going to do to, I don't want to say appease these people, but what are we going to do to prevent this problem from continuing to occur?
Absolutely, a perfect question. You know, if you looked at the breakdown of the comments we received at the public scoping workshops, many of those were on those lines of nuisance elk issues. So to address that, we have specific strategies within the plan related to either population management. You know, maybe there's an opportunity to do private land hunts. We have a matrix in here that addresses how we respond to elk nuisance complaints. You know, again, kind of a strategic way of doing it. You start here. If that doesn't work, you go here. If that doesn't work, you step that down until you get to, you know, your last resort.
We had private land hunts the past 2 years, and it's my understanding that she wouldn't let anybody hunt there. So I don't know how private land hunts would affect her situation.
I don't know whether that specific landowner would allow hunting, even if we do a specific private land hunting season. You know, what we had last year was elk hunters were drawn. They could either hunt public land, they were assigned a zone, or if they found a willing landowner, they could hunt private. Landowners weren't willing to let people they didn't know come hunt. A lot of people that were drawn may not have had the financial means to you know, make it happen. But there are a lot of landowners that are interested in hunting their own property. They feel like, you know, they're the ones living with these elk, dealing with elk issues, and they're getting nothing out of the deal. So there's an opportunity to provide an incentive to even have elk on your property, which, you know, is debatable right now for some of these folks.
For instance, maybe like landowner tags of some sort?
Yes, sir. When I was with Arkansas Game and Fish, we had similar elk issues, and we developed a program called EMAP. So we had DMAP, which is Deer Management Assistance Program. We developed an Elk Management Assistance Program, and through that we had an overall quota of number of elk that could be taken in a specific 5 or 7 day hunt. And when that quota was met, the hunt stopped. But it was guaranteed landowner tags. If you were in the elk zone, you had a chance to hunt. Now, maybe the hunt lasted all 5 days, maybe it ended after day 4, but it provided everybody that opportunity to hunt on their own property, unless the quota had been met.
All right. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to call on Ms. Joy Sweeney.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Joy Sweeney. I am the Wild Turkey Program Leader for TWRA, and I am here to introduce Dr. David Buehler. He is the lead investigator on an ongoing 6-year-long turkey research project that we are working with the University of Tennessee on. And Dr. Buehler is a professor of wildlife science at the Department of Forestry and Wildlife and Fisheries, and he's been there since 1997. His career has been focused on education, research, and outreach, and he's very passionate about avian conservation. He has an extensive research background with expertise in avian population dynamics, and he's well known for his work with cerulean and golden-winged warblers. I've enjoyed working with him and learning from him, and I'm pleased to introduce Dr. David Buehler, who's here to give us and inform us on the ongoing turkey research project.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners and TWRA folks and members of the public. I'm here to report on a 1-year update on this project. 2 years ago, the Commission gave us a green light to go forward, and this project is actually one of the largest research and outreach focused projects in in TWRA history. And of course, it's focused on wild turkeys. This is a really important resource, as you know. Over 100,000 people turkey hunt in Tennessee. And the economic impact of that, our folks are still working on a concise estimate, but it's clearly in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So when you think about the decisions you make as a commission relative to turkey hunting, this isn't just, you know, a bunch of hunters going out in the field chasing, you know, some dumb birds around. This is a really important endeavor. And this research is aimed at really providing you with some of the critical pieces of information that will allow you to make good, informed decisions. So with that introduction, I'll get going on the details. Many of you were not actually here when we presented to the commission the proposal 2 years ago. So I have kind of assumed that this is your first look at this project in many cases. The project team, TWRA has put tremendous resources into this project in terms of everything from officers out in the counties all the way up to Joy and Joe Benedict as the assistant chief. UT has put forth an outstanding team of researchers and extension specialists, myself and Dr. Craig Harper, our wildlife extension specialist. Dr. Rick Gerhold is the disease specialist with the vet school, and Dr. Neelam Pujal is our human dimensions and economics guy. And this team has really the skill set needed to make this whole project happen. The funding for this project came from a whole variety of sources, but the key piece of it, which you all approved 2 years ago, was to allow TWRA to use federal funding through Pittman-Robertson Act funds that were passed through to UT. And then UT, through contributing our staff time and portions of the overhead and the benefits that go with our faculty salaries, provided the match to make this project possible. And then finally, National Wild Turkey Federation stepped up, both the state chapter and nationally, to provide additional support for the project. So it took a whole effort from TWRA, UT, and NWTF to make this possible. So today what I'd like to do is bring you up to speed on the project and the questions being addressed, a little about study design and methods, not too much, a little bit about results, but please bear in mind we've completed 1 year on the project, and this is 5 years in the field. That's one thing about wildlife research is every year is a new year. Weather changes, and hopefully we'll have a good nesting season with reasonable weather, but you've got to look at it multiple years to understand all the dynamics going on in this system. So this is not a definitive look at what turkeys are doing, but it's the first really good chance to do an update on what we've learned. So as you all are aware, the population has undergone restoration and maintenance, and I'm going to try to turn on this thing. Okay, this worked, hey, amazingly. So this area over here is the maintenance area where we've met our population goals at a little over 30,000 per year in harvest. And for the last 10 plus years, the population and the harvest has been pretty stable. So this was kind of the golden years of turkey management and turkey hunting in the state. This is Region 2 harvest, and if you actually look at the last 10 years, you can see where the concern is coming from. So the harvest in some of the best turkey hunting counties in the state have declined really significantly over the last 10 years, with declines in some cases almost up to 50% in harvest. And it's important to recognize that harvest is not a direct correlate with population trend. So what happens when the population starts going down is turkey hunters go out there and they hunt a little bit harder. I know personally, I just get mad and I go out there and I hunt a couple extra days to get that bird or that second bird. And that's exactly what the average hunter does. So when the population starts declining, hunters exert more effort. And so when you have harvest as your key measure of population, you have to realize that the actual population trend is probably more serious than what you're seeing reflected by harvest. So the questions we're looking at are To what extent have the populations themselves declined, and what are the demographic reasons for that decline, reproduction and survival? Are there specific habitat factors that we can identify that could be managed to address the decline? We're looking at the hunter side of the question because obviously we're managing not just turkey populations, but we're managing hunters and hunter satisfaction. And then finally, because of some significant disease questions have come up, we're looking at the role that disease plays. The objectives follow those questions: monitor turkey reproduction, survival, and habitat use, monitor harvest, do hunter surveys to track what the hunters are up to, conduct disease surveillance, and then look at ultimately providing you with information to develop alternative management strategies. So here's the study sites. The 5 counties are Wayne, Lawrence, Giles, Murray, and Bedford. And those little stars in each site are focal areas where we basically are working primarily on private lands, trapping turkeys. And on each of the sites where there was a star, our goal was to rocket net and radio tag 10 hens and 10 gobblers and jakes in the first year, and then supplement that trapping in each additional years to maintain that sample size. So we monitor nest survival, brood survival with the poults, adult survival, and then we also look at habitat use at all stages. So this is a lot of in-depth, field-based investigation. And this is what we did last year in terms of trapping. So our goal was 200 total, and we trapped, especially TWRA officers and our field techs and grad students, trapped 269 birds total. So we well met our goals, and we had a little over 100 hens and a little over 100 gobblers and jakes. So last year we were very successful at getting this radio sample out there. And then we've just finished up trapping last week again, and we've restored our sample size. So once again, we're tracking a whole bunch of birds with conventional radio telemetry. So the key part on the hen side of the equation is to actually monitor nests. And so we go in and we monitor those hens daily as they go into the nesting season. And when they start incubating, we can tell that the birds are incubating a nest. And then once they hatch, we go in and we take a look at it and see what's happened. And these examples here show you what a complete clutch looks like in a hatched nest versus a depredated nest. So you can actually tell if the hen is successful by what the nest looks like and also what the hen's behavior is like, because if she hatches a nest, she's got poults with her. And this summarizes county level data, but the bottom yellow line gives you an idea of what overall nest survival was like for hens that incubated a nest, about 26%. And this is marginally okay in terms of nest survival, just a little bit on the low side compared to a lot of other studies, but not catastrophically bad. If you want to look at what happens to the nests that we lose, it's almost 2/3 mammalian predators. So skunks, possums, raccoons, coyotes, foxes, anything mammalian size, medium-sized mammal, walking on the ground, comes up on a turkey nest, they're going to consume the eggs. So that's kind of the #1 predator out there. I was a little surprised that snake predation didn't appear to be that significant for turkeys. So we've done a whole bunch of habitat measurements, both at nest sites and at landscape scales, and we're just getting into the analysis of these data, and this is going to be the focus of the graduate student's thesis. So we also monitor poults, and to monitor the poults, you go in first day after they hatch, and you can catch them by hand. And so we normally go in the dark while the hen is brooding the brood, and with flashlights, the hen will flush and run away. She'll stay nearby calling, and you can just run up there and catch the poults by hand. Now you can do this up until about day 6 or day 7. So you can imagine if you're a coyote or a bobcat or any predator, if we can catch them, anything else can catch those birds. So we've been radio tagging these birds, and this shows you a day-old poult, putting a little radio tag on them so that we can track them and see what happens to them. And again, the analysis is not complete, but less than 20% of the poults lasted for the first 4 weeks. And right there, that kind of points to a pretty significant issue, because these hens go to all this trouble of raising a nest and incubating it, and then if most of the poults end up in somebody's belly, that's not a good thing. So here's adult survival, and so this shows you a 1-year survival rate for the hens that were radio tagged, and I haven't broken down the sources of mortality, but overall survival was about 62% for the hens, and with hunting about 56% for the males, and that's good. So those numbers are fine in terms of annual survival rates. And interestingly enough, we only lost 7 out of 34 gobblers during the season, so only 20% of the gobblers were harvested. All these properties that we're working on are hunted, and some are hunted pretty hard. And the harvest rate was a little surprising to me. And also the hunters that on these properties that we're working on are very selective. They're generally not taking jakes hardly at all. So a little bit about the hunter surveys. We surveyed 2,000 hunters in those 5 focal counties, and this is similar to the statewide turkey hunter survey that was done by Pujol a couple of years ago. But it was focused on our counties that we're working in. We got over 700 surveys returned, so we have a really good sample size. And we asked some questions about how many days did you hunt, and how successful were you, and other considerations. And the interesting thing is, on average, our turkey hunters killed just about 1 bird on average per hunter, which is fine, but 45% of the hunters didn't kill anything. So almost half the hunters came home empty-handed, and they spent on average 12 days of hunting in the field. So it took 12 days to kill a turkey in the best counties in Tennessee. So right there you understand that, this is real, things have changed in those counties. A little bit about disease tracking. We do blood tests. And the disease surveillance looks for avian influenza, Newcastle disease, mycoplasma, and toxoplasmosis. These are all things that are significant for turkeys that we're screening for. And we take blood samples from the birds when we capture them for radio tag attachment. And then if we ever find a dead bird where the carcass is intact, we can do more in-depth analyses for additional diseases. And the disease picture is one of those things where you think, well, this seems like a lot of work to pick, to really be looking for a needle in a haystack sort of thing. Like maybe there's a disease element out there. But of course, last year, as luck would have it, we have an avian influenza outbreak on a farm where we had radio tag birds right in the neighborhood. And, all of a sudden, a little light bulb goes off in my head. I'm really glad I've got radio tag birds right there, because we'll be able to figure out whether or not there's disease transmission from chicken farms directly into avian influenza into the turkey population. And fortunately, we've seen no evidence of that from the birds that we're monitoring. But as luck would have it, that avian influenza did turn out to be a significant issue right in the heart of those counties. So a little bit just in terms of some real preliminary conclusions. We haven't detected any key things associated with chicken litter, and that's been one of the real questions, is whether chicken litter coming off of the poultry farms are transmitting disease to the wild turkey population, and we haven't seen any strong evidence that that's the case. And then also for the birds that we necropsied, most of these birds just died from trauma. And what trauma means is you run into things or something runs into you. And it could be a bobcat, it could be a great horned owl, but not a disease-based thing, but a impact-related cause of death. So just to wrap this up, some very preliminary conclusions. In terms of productivity, the nest survival was marginally okay. Clutch size was a little bit low. Poult survival appeared to be low. And because of that, the number of poults produced per hen, a key measure of productivity, was low. And so when you go out there in July and you start seeing the broods show up with the hens, count the number of poults are with an individual hen, that measure is a pretty good measure of the season's productivity, and last year the numbers were pretty low. The overall survival picture looks good. Hunter success is declining. The hunters are very aware of this problem. That's one thing that they expressed throughout the surveys, and some hunters called me and said, I'm glad you're doing the survey because I want to tell you what's going on with this resource and what it means to us. And then finally, the disease surveillance. We documented exposure to some of these things, but we haven't seen any smoking gun on the disease side. So that's everything I've got, and I appreciate the opportunity to present here today and give you this update.
Thank you, Dr. Buehler. Commissioner Gardner.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the briefing. That was interesting. And I've just got a couple of questions. And you didn't address what you thought a nest success goal was, percentage-wise.
So that 30% mark. So we measured 26% per nesting attempt. If you actually looked at hens that re-nest, if you hit 30 to 40%, you basically are in the good range. And so we're just a little bit on the low side. So 30 to 40% would be considered what you would hope for.
Okay, and then one other thing, of all the properties that you're conducting your study on, are any of them do they have an active trapping program?
You know, that I'm not sure of. I'm sure some of them do. But that would be definitely something to document, because I was wondering about that driving over today. That would be a real interesting thing to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cook.
Thank you. So I'll try to ask this in the most neutral, unbiased way. So last year during our season setting meeting, we had quite a bit of discussion about, do we change parameters in the turkey season, such as bag limits or well, mainly bag limits, but also harvesting 2 turkeys in one day. What do you think how would it affect your study if we were to change the bag limits and those sort of parameters during the study period? Because this is going to come up in the next few months, so some direction would be helpful.
Well, it wouldn't be catastrophic if you did. I mean, if you did change regulations, you know, we're monitoring these things, and we could probably see that effect. We will have 2 years of data without any change, which is really what we wanted at a minimum. So I would say, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd rather have a little more time to establish the baseline, but nevertheless, it wouldn't be catastrophically bad for the project.
Mr. Swan.
It looks like from your presentation, counting avian and snakes, that about 73% of depredation is caused by predators. Do you think there's some kind of correlation between the low prices of furs and people not trapping now and the decline of the nesting ability of the turkeys?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, this is not just turkeys, it's quail and other ground nesting birds are all seeing the same thing. And so the predator population, the predator community has changed in the last 20 to 30 years. And from a game bird nesting point of view, for the worse. There's no doubt about that.
Would you say that this 73% depredation would be pretty much hold true in other parts of the state?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that would be the case. And it's actually not necessarily 73%, it's actually higher. It's just that some of those nests, they failed, but we couldn't assign a cause to them. So we couldn't say it was mammalian or avian or whatever. So it's actually
that fell in the unknown category, didn't it?
Right, the unknown,
yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sanders.
Just a real quick question to make sure I heard right. You said there wasn't a significant outbreak of the flu from the chickens, but I thought I heard you say right after that there was an outbreak of the flu in the turkey population.
No, if I said that, I misspoke.
I may have heard that. It may not have been what you said.
So there was a significant outbreak on the chicken farms.
Right.
but we didn't see any evidence of it being transmitted to the wild turkey population.
So there was no flu outbreak in the turkey population, not transmitted, but just in general?
Right.
Oh, thank you.
Commissioner Cook?
Sorry, one other question. I know for ducks, you know, there's the elevated sort of predator-proofed nesting cages, basically. Is there anything that works for turkeys like that is?
Well, one of the reasons why we're looking at all those habitat measurements is we want to know exactly what habitat characteristics are tied to success. And through that, can you develop management strategies to be successful just with habitat management? The theory is good habitat will have some immunity to predation.
Yes.
Okay.
I noticed one of those stars looked, I think it's in Wayne County, right on the river. Looks to be straight across the river from our farm. Anyway, is that a river bottom area where
Yeah.
you can actually study if the water comes up and
Right.
what percentage is lost? And
Yeah.
what percentage of the hens would you say renest that lose their?
I don't have that number real handy, but it's about 20 to 30%,
Okay.
something in that neighborhood. It's not really high, and it depends on when they lose the nest. Okay.
What about we have a fall season for hens. You see a need to keep that, or what's your opinion on the killing? I know that obviously affects the population, but what's your opinion on that?
You know, I think a couple of years ago, the commission decided to close 3 of the counties down on our study sites, and I'm actually really glad they did, because in a situation where you know you have a declining population, shooting hens in the fall or at any time is probably not a good biological strategy. So for those counties, I think it made a lot of sense. For other counties where there's no indication of a decline, I know there's, you know, a lot of people like to fall turkey hunt. I don't think it's really a problem unless you see that harvest is going down. And then I would think a county by county decision would make a lot of sense.
I've probably had more people comment on the turkey population this year across the river from where you're doing. I'm right across the river in West Tennessee, but more people just say they don't have the turkeys.
And out of
So
those
that's why
5
I'm wondering
counties
if
we're
it's-
looking at, Wayne County definitely has the fewest.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Buehler.
Thank you.
We're going to change the order just a bit, waiting on Commissioner Woodson, who's in a meeting with the governor, so she should be here soon. So call on Vice Chairman Woods for the Fisheries Management Committee.
I'm not even going to have to introduce him in. Here comes Frank Fiss up all on his own. I didn't even have to say it.
Well, thank you so much, Vice Chairman. I'm not giving this presentation at this time. This is going to be the Roaring River presentation. But I am here to introduce our speaker, who is Mark Thurman, the Region 3 Fisheries Manager. And I feel like I know a lot of us, we all know Mark, but a lot of us may not recognize him because he lost his beard. So I felt obligated to introduce him. And secondly, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware that the work that he's going to be presenting led to a group of professionals in the Tennessee chapter of the American Fisheries Societies to select Mark as the Outstanding Fisheries Scientist of the Year. He probably won't share that with you, so I'm doing that for him. And without further ado, here's Mark without the beard.
All right, well, it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to talk to you about a dam removal project that took place back in 2017 in late July and early August. I know in your packet you have a presentation that I put together. I got here this morning and in talking with Jason Harmon, he put together a really good video on this, and it covered everything that was in my presentation. So I want to go with that. I want to show you guys that video and then another short video that some folks from the Nature Conservancy put together. So with that, we'll go through the videos and I'll answer any questions you have. We're here today on one of Tennessee's state scenic rivers, the Roaring River. It's located in Jackson County, not too far from Gainesboro. The Roaring River is a special place. It's not only a state scenic river, it's a great place for fishing, boating. You have species like smallmouth bass, rock bass. There are also a number of darters and red horse species that live in the river. One of the unique things about Roaring River is the TWRA has a couple of wildlife management areas upstream, and these wildlife management areas are used as access. And a lot of people will put in at the Boyles Wildlife Management Area and float down to this site. Roaring River Dam was built in 1976. It was a partnership between the TWRA and the Army Corps of Engineers. In 2011, a head cut developed in the dam. The head cut is creating a safety hazard and has grown since 2011. Removing the dam will take care of the safety hazard, and it'll also allow passage of fish and other animals upriver. The original intent of the dam was to limit reservoir species from moving up into Roaring River. There were some concerns about the quality of fishing and the movement of those reservoir species affecting that quality. The dam has only partially served as a barrier. We've been doing work down here and we've seen the reservoir species that we thought would be limited upstream. So it's not done that, coupled with the fact that it is failing and really needs to be taken care of, has led us to this point. So the removal process itself has been a partnership. We have partnered with the Nature Conservancy, the Department of Environment and Conservation, and with the Army Corps of Engineers. The Nature Conservancy was able to secure some funding through the Southeastern Aquatic Resources Partnership, or SARP, and has provided that money for this project. And we also were able to secure some grant money through TDEC to help pay for this removal. We're managing the removal, but all these other groups have been a big part of getting this project done. Will this still be an access? And absolutely, this is Corps of Engineers property. It can still be used as an access point. One of the big differences is going to be if you put in at the Boyles or up on Blackburn Fork at the Blackburn Fork WMA and you float down to this site, you're not going to have to portage that dam. You're going to have a riffle or a run that develops after the dam's removed, and you'll have passage straight through. It'll keep people from having to drag boats over the top of it and potentially ended up in that notch that's formed, or portaging all the way around. So it'll be a nice access. As we've publicized that we're going to be taking the dam out, we've been getting a lot of questions about what this site's going to look like after the dam's removed. Most likely, we're going to have a gravel bar that forms in the area just upstream of the dam. It will move somewhat downstream. For the most part, the site will stay pretty similar as far as downstream habitat goes. Upstream, we're going to actually be gaining some stream habitat. We'll have the gravel bar that forms. There's a lot of other structure that will develop. Pools, riffles will develop in the stretch upstream. We've had questions about how far upstream will we see the effect of removing the dam. And at our estimate, the farthest upstream we'll see a difference is about a mile. It won't lower the water levels near the Boyles. It won't lower the water levels in Blackburn Fork. And what we're expecting to see is the habitat that you see immediately downstream of the Boyles. That's what this is going to look like. So even though the failure of the dam is a negative, being able to remove it is a positive. We're going to open up the river for navigation. We're also going to open up fish passage and passage for species like smallmouth bass and white bass, possibly even a sauger. Red horse species are going to be able to migrate upstream, and that'll be a big plus to the river. It stands to benefit the eastern hellbender in removing this barrier. So all in all, the removal of the dam is a positive thing, and we're really glad that all the partnerships came together and that we're able to take care of this. I think people will find that they've got a great place to enjoy one of our state scenic rivers. It'll be here for the public to enjoy. I'm Mark Thurman for your Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. We have one more. So that was the project. We got the dam taken care of, and the site, people are down there using it now. We're doing some work to evaluate fish passage. We're doing some red horse tagging down there, and we've got some fish tagged and looking at how far upstream we find them. We've also, just recently, last week, we planted about 2 to 3 acres of bald cypress, sycamore, non-bark at the mud flat just upstream of the old dam site. So. Yeah, it was good to get this project taken care of. Do you guys have any questions on it?
Mark, you need to grow your beard back. It hides a lot of ugliness.
Wow. No respect. No respect. All right.
I want a roll call vote on
that.
Who's the guitar player?
I don't know. The video was put together by Rob Buehler and Paul Kingsbury from the Nature Conservancy, and Rob had put trail cams out, and all that was done with trail cams. He did a really cool job, and Jason Harmon, thank you for putting that video together. Yeah, but thank you all.
I was going to ask one question too. That was one of my things. How long did it take to remove the dam? Because in the first video, it seemed like it took a lot longer than the second one.
And it took about 4 days to get it all done. It seemed longer at times,
Yeah.
but yeah, it took about 4 days to get it done.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else?
Now, Mark, what was your award again?
It was the Tennessee AFS chapter Outstanding Fisheries Scientist.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Anything else? You got something, Angie?
Congratulations, I'll vote no beard. Looks good.
We had a beard removal as well, so.
Right.
Took more than 4 days.
Is that it?
Yeah. So again, we'll change order, and we'll go, I'll call on, well, Vice Chairman Stroud for the Retention and Recruitment Committee. We're all over the place today.
I'd like to recognize Doug Markham.
Hello, Commissioners. We've been working on a pretty cool project here lately that I think everybody's going to like. We can make sure it keeps working. This is sort of a dual team here today. It's more about Jason talking to you today than it is about me, but we're on our final stages of getting up the Tennessee elk cam from Hatfield Knob, and we've been looking at it, testing it, trying to get everything worked out, trying to get everything paid for, trying to make sure that we have a good strong signal from Hatfield Knob, and we've been seeing some incredible things over there. The elk, I didn't know they came into the field so much. When I first started talking about to Brad, I thought maybe they just came in October. He didn't say that. That's just was my interpretation, that we were going to see these animals once or twice a year for a couple months. Well, that's not the case. They've been really putting on a show, except for like today.
They don't like the rain, I guess. Actually, it was kind of a slow weekend. We're watching them a lot. And maybe tomorrow morning we can show them to you. But we want to make an official launch tomorrow if they're in the field. We've got a lot of information ready to go. We're going to hit a button and send out a newsletter to 550,000 people. So we're going to find out if that stream works good tomorrow or not. We may see a lot of black, but we're going to work on that. Anyway, just before Jason comes up here, just to give you an idea of all the people that, not all the people because we can't name them all, but a lot of folks that have worked hard on this project. It's been a real collective effort to try to get this signal from a long ways away in the middle of nowhere. And you see the names up there, but there's others too. We had a lot of help out of our IT division giving us some money and some other stuff, and some good folks, good help from them in other ways too. But you see everybody up there that has helped so much. And Jason, you'll see some photographs in a minute. He's the jack of all trade for TWRA. He goes everywhere, and I don't know what the guy that came down to help would have done without Jason, because he became his assistant on the day they were putting this thing up. A lot of people did. Brad was there. Matt Cameron was there. So. Which one, Jason? Gotcha, right there. All right. Jason's going to start telling you some of the stuff that's in it. It's really pretty cool, and I'll just listen to him, and I might come back at the end if we forgot a thing or two to tell you about it.
All right. Commissioners, thank you for letting me speak a little bit today, and thanks, Doug, for letting me jump in and try to guide you along here and kind of give you a little timeline of how this all came about. Anyway, some meetings, some of the workshops you heard about earlier from Brad is where some of these thoughts came from. And then Brad and Matt Cameron brought the ideas to us, and Doug kind of said, we can do that. Let's see if we can't make it happen. And as you've seen, the team all worked hard, and now we're here. So the rig itself, Solar Rig Technologies out of New Jersey, Richard Thurman designed the box and brought it on down from there. The top camera is an Axis PTZ. It's a pan tilt zoom. So we can go 360 degrees with that camera, look on all sides of that pole. Hey, look at her face back. The Axis 4K camera, the one you see below the top one there, it shoots a semi-wide shot of the field out in front. Stationary, can't move it, but it shoots a really good high-quality photo, and it's continuously shooting photos for us, so we'll have some stuff to choose from on that one. And then there's also a switch with the cameras go into the switch, into the modem. Verizon sends a signal. It's all powered by batteries, the inverter breakers, and the breakers flip everything on, and the solar panels give it power. So this was our trip up that morning. I heard there might be some snow, and sure enough, we had a little bit of snow that morning overnight, and it was pretty easy getting in, not too bad. And we ended up at Hatfield Knob. There's the viewing tower. And the next slide here kind of gives you an idea of where we're standing in relation to that. I'm going to try the handy dandy gadget here. Next to his hand is the tower. So we're about 300 or 400 yards, maybe a little bit more, out in front of that tower behind a little patch of trees. And that's Richard there on the left and Brad on the right there, trying to decide where we're going to put this camera, which way we're going to point it and whatnot. Matt Cameron helping, and Ray Bostic there helping get some of the solar panels out. Two of those, that's one of them. That's the box that all the batteries and everything are in, all the components. There's Ray driving the tractor and getting Richard in position to start mounting the box. And while we were doing that, the elk were watching. They were there all day long. When we got there, they showed up, and they watched us from that field, and then they moved on over and watched us from another section. A couple of shots Matt got with his camera. Really cool to watch them. And then another couple shots here. They're still, as you can see in this shot, they've moved off back over on this side of the pole and are watching us over back here. But anyway, got the box up. We're putting the cameras on in that shot there. And once the box was installed, we set the batteries in. So that's what the box looks like with all the components, minus the cameras and the solar panels. And another shot of us putting the stuff up. I got to get my hands dirty a little bit that day. I was there to document mostly, but then I got to put to work. So here we are dialing in the camera, and then we got the solar panels on, and that's a shot of the finished product. Another angle there. Once again, The elk are out in the distance, watching us work. And then here's another shot of the pole. There's the crew minus Brad. He had to jet a little early to take care of his kids, but after we got finished, we had to do a selfie. And on the way out, the elk were nearby. So, since we got it up, it's been working well. We've been testing and letting the agency kind of test it. We've sent emails to the staff and let them watch the camera and see if we can't break it and see if we can keep it going and not have any problems once we release it to the public. But here are a few shots that we've captured with the PTZ, being able to move it around and find these elk in the field. They're there just about every day, depending on the weather. I was just told that high winds and different weather conditions up there will push them off the sides of that knob there, but they're there most of the time. Just a few shots here. And it's pretty cool to be able to pan across through there and see what you can find. This guy was standing behind the pole, kind of in the trees a little bit. Jeff Green was able to capture that one day when he was playing around with the camera. We're going to actually eventually give control of the camera to Region 4, and Brad and some of the guys out there can reposition and find the elk during the day and get them on the camera, so the folks at home all around the state and all around the world can watch it if they want to. And then here's some examples of the 4K camera. A little bit better quality image. That was actually a much wider image, and I zoomed in and cropped it so you can see the quality is really good on that camera. And then when there's no elk, there might be a turkey or two. So it's a critter cam, and we can see just about anything out there: deer, turkey, bear. And then when there's no animals, you get beauty shots like this or like this. So. And that's it. Like Doug said, we plan to launch it on Wednesday the 21st, tomorrow, if we can find some elk. Or I'd like for the elk to be in the field when we say go watch the elk, but we'll see what happens.
That's great. It does, just real quick, it does have audio, so come the time when they bugle, we'll get to hear them bugle when that happens. So just knock on wood. We don't want to send out a gov delivery tomorrow to 550,000 people with showing them grass. So we might wait till Thursday or Friday. One of our tests went out to our folks, and that's what they saw was grass. So we're going to try to do better than that. Anyway, appreciate your time.
Thank you, Doug.
Show them the camera.
On the page. We're going to pull it up.
Oh, okay, sure. We'll show you some grass right now. I will say too, we have added. Can you pull it up a little more? Okay.
That's it live.
That's live.
That's live, and that can pan, and we pan it a lot. Jason pans it better than I do. I tend to go shoot a lot of sky and a lot of grass. But we're getting better at it, and we're going to teach Channel 4. I don't know where that came from. We're going to teach Brad and all them. I guess I just always have TV on my mind. We're going to teach Brad and those guys how to do it and try to have a schedule so that we're looking at it on weekends too. We'll figure it out. Yes, sir.
Is the tower over here on the left? Is it on the left-hand side of that live shot?
Jason, on the right side.
Okay, I see. Okay.
So, and when y'all go up there in September, we'll all get you out in front of the camera and let people see y'all and grass. So it'd be a cool shot. The guy that came down, I want to mention Richard Herman. He's terrific. We met Richard through kind of through Rodney Woodson here that y'all have met before. Rodney was big into our hog program. He's really gotten good at how to capture hogs, and he worked with this guy from New Jersey named Richard Herman. Richard actually drove down from New Jersey and spent the entire day putting that rig up for us, along with Jason and the other guys. So we do have audio on it. We have a donate button on it. We're working with the foundation. If we get any donations, it will go to the foundation and be put into the elk program to go specifically for elk and elk habitat. That's what our plans are. Anything else?
Any questions? About 3 years ago, thank you, Doug.
Yes, sir.
About 3 years ago, I was lucky enough to go. If you haven't been, you have to go. We went up there and went to the tower and saw all the elk, and then we went with a couple of the guys and we darted an elk, a bull, And that's why I was asking about the tower and stuff, because he came out and we snuck up on him and darted the elk, and they did some research on him and stuff. But you really are going to, it's an amazing thing to see that's in our state. It's these kind of elk, and there's some really big bulls, and there's just a lot of elk. We had a great time. We went to different fields and so forth, and I think we're going to do that in September, right, Jeff?
We are. I was going to mention that's a little heads up. We hope to go and hopefully do the same thing. At least we'll view them, and maybe we possibly could radio tag one of them. We're working on that, see if that's a possibility. So yeah, looking
It's
forward.
great.
That's in September.
And it's a beautiful place to be. When you're not there, just getting there, I can't tell you how many elk we saw just on the side of the road coming up to that spot where there was a ton of them. It was really good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. I think this is a great program for education, outreach. It's a great program. Thanks for doing this. Great. Thank you, Commissioner Stroud. We'll recognize, moving the Budget Committee, recognize Chairman Sanders.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to call up Pandy English.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Sanders. This is a budget expansion for the Region 2 Wildlife Diversity Program. It's an expansion of $203,090 for conservation of Indiana bat maternity areas. This is TVA money. It's coming from TVA mitigation funds. No match is required. And I request that budget expansion. Are there any questions?
We have a motion. Have a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed? No, I'm not going to discuss. No. Is there any discussion? Nobody had any questions? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to call Frank Fiss to the podium. I'll discuss this one.
Thank you, Chairman. We're requesting a budget expansion of $106,500 to pay for remediation bills when the Springfield Hatchery residence was flooded last year. The funding will come from an insurance settlement of $71,500 and $35,000 from the wetlands maintenance fund. Questions?
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval.
A motion and a second. All right. We have a question.
Hey, Frank, the $35,000 out of the wetlands funds, is there any way we can use the marine tax funds for that rather than wetlands funds?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know.
Seems like we have a limited amount of wetlands funds, and
Mr. Chairman, it is an option to use the marine fuel tax money to do that. We purposely went with the wetlands fund because it was set up that we could do maintenance projects on our facilities that we owned, and the transfer tax money that's coming in is coming in a pretty substantial amount. We have a little bit of a maintenance problem in terms of getting our budgets raised to accept that money, not from you all, but on the broader scale from the other state departments. But anyway, we could go either way, and it's certainly a commission call. It was just our preference. We thought the maintenance fund set up through the wetlands fund would be a better avenue.
yeah, and I guess my concern is that wetlands, there are several things you can spend money on wetlands on that you can't access that money on. And I'm concerned that we're spending money that we could allocate elsewhere that you couldn't use the marine money for. I propose that we use that $35,000 out of the marine fund. Or I guess I'm making an amendment to the motion.
So we have motion to amend the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
We have a second. Any discussion? All right.
Got some. Ken in here. Ken, what do we have in the wetlands funds right now?
Wetlands fund balance, cash balance, approximately 10 million.
Okay. And fuel tax, 2.8 per year. I don't know. I just want to be very careful. I know we got a lot of things we want to do with the fuel tax. Chris, you got something you want to add?
Thank you, Chairman Holbert. Commissioner Garner, it's a fair question. And I think when we passed the bill last year that did the fuel tax changes, we made a commitment to the General Assembly that the money collected on the water through the marine fuel tax would be spent on the water. And certainly, a fish hatchery, you can make that logical leap to say that this is going back into the waters of Tennessee. So I think from a true technical standpoint of, are we permitted to spend that money in this manner? I think the answer would be yes. However, this is a structure on a piece of property that we own and we maintain. And the year before last, we made some changes to the Wetlands Acquisition Fund. And what we told the General Assembly at that time is that we wanted the flexibility to use those acquisition dollars not only for acquiring new property, but for maintaining and enhancing existing properties under the jurisdiction of the agency. So while I think both pots of money are certainly appropriate, it's my opinion that this is more of a maintenance issue of a physical piece of real property that probably better fits within those wetland acquisition dollars as opposed to the marine fuel tax, which if we were talking about spending money on the production of fish, I think that's more directly related to marine fuel tax. Whereas we're talking about repairing a building on a piece of property, I think that's more in line with the wetlands acquisition dollars and what the stated intent of the General Assembly is for the expenditure of those funds. Thank you.
So your recommendation is?
My recommendation would be in line with the initial proposal by the agency to spend this $35,000 out of the wetlands maintenance fund as opposed to the marine fuel tax.
Based on that, I withdraw my amendment.
All right, the amendment has been withdrawn. Any other discussions on the original proposal? All in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
And Colonel Darren Ryder.
Thank you, Chairman Sanders. This budget expansion is not for Springfield Hatchery. I'm waiting. Can I do this from here, or you got it? See, Mark, I knew UT Knoxville wasn't going to Sweet 16. He lost his bet. Chad shaved his beard. Just kidding. Hey, we're getting close. There we go. I see it here.
Is it that one, sir?
Yes. Thank you. This budget expansion is for $200,000. This money is 100% federal monies, and these dollars have been awarded to TWRA through a grant from the Department of Homeland Security, and these monies will be earmarked for the purchase of laptop computers for a wildlife officer, so there's no state dollars attached. It was a very nice gift from the Department of Homeland Security.
Just out of curiosity, how many laptops approximately?
This will buy 50.
Okay.
They're Panasonic Tough Books. That's the industry standard that will be inserted when we get our CAD system running. And Florida and Georgia were nice enough to give us that information on lessons learned, so they're Panasonic Tough books, and this will buy 50 of them. And there's hopes, with fingers crossed, that there may be some additional monies from the Department of Homeland Security, so I hope in a month or two I can come up and ask for another $100,000 or another $200,000, but this is a great gift for us to buy these ruggedized Tough books.
Thank you.
How many do we need? I mean,
152. It's a start.
First, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Have a second? All right. Discussion.
Would these be the similar type computers like the Highway Patrol has in their vehicles?
That's correct.
So they would be able to communicate without having to use the radio then, if they had cell service?
Yes, it's part of that computer aided dispatch system. Once you go live in this computer, you can log in and log out, and the dispatcher will be able to monitor it on these computers.
Would they be able to print out citations directly from that computer?
That's correct.
I don't want to ever get anything printed from one of them.
We can put a tracker on you.
Colonel Ryder, is this the last of the, it was about a year and a half ago when we appropriated the money for the TCAN, I think it's TCAN, the system, the statewide network for law enforcement communications. Is this I think this is the end of the funding for that, right?
We're solid on the radio program on that TCAN. That was at $7 million a few years back. And I may misspeak here, but an additional $1 million was granted for the CAD system. And I'm trying to be correct here. It was a huge hurdle and challenge dealing with state government. And we finally got a vendor, and we got it passed, and we're rocking and we're rolling right now. And just so you know, that's Todd Allen. He's our communication captains. And so he's spearheading this whole CAD project. And he met with them last week. They've been here in the building, and they tell us November is a possible go-live date, and it's been a long time waiting. We're very excited for this system to come in place. So it's Todd's trial by fire dealing with government's processes and paperwork and challenges, but we're in a great place right now today, so we're moving forward very fast.
How are folks adapting? I know the officer that came from Georgia and discussed it with us, he said it takes about 6 months or so until people start to appreciate it.
It's a culture change, and we'll find that out.
Thank you.
Commissioner Swan.
What databases would they have access to? Would they have FBI, state? Would they have Georgia, Kentucky, Alabama, states around us?
If it's okay, Commissioner, kind of bring Captain Allen up here, because
no, it's not okay. You have to bring him.
I'm still in the #2 lead pencil days, so I'll let him speak. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, they'll have access to the NCIC ties network that we currently have access to run people for warrants or stolen property. And the Brant system, the real system, will be tied into it also, so officers can run license checks, harvest checks, things like that.
Which ties you into Florida and Georgia, because they're both on Brant.
Yeah. Yeah. So the bottom line is they may be really encountering some bad actors that they would have known about in the past.
Right. They would anyway if they ran a check on somebody, but now with the system, when they run somebody for a license check, it'll automatically run wanted or things like that, alerts that they need to know, and it'll pop up on their screen. They can do it silently so the people they're with won't know they're getting messaged.
Pictures and all, huh?
Right.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chairman Cook, that's everything.
Thank you, Chairman Sanders. How about we take a 15-minute break? So back at, let's say, 2:35.